Let's do it.
All right, everybody, we have Jared Hill. He is a pop culture journalist and media personality and host for an array of different media. Jared, tell me, who all are you talking to these days?
Well, I host and write for the New York Times, Essence, The Hollywood Reporter, a new outlet called Them, which is for LGBTQ people, and NBC News with NBC BOK and NBC Out as well.
Yes, absolutely. So let's start with our culture soup moment. As everybody knows, I say social media is culture soup. So I
Absolutely.
have gone through the threads, and the thing that jumped out at me, that reminded me of you, is all of this talk and all of this content about Michelle Obama. And we'll explain to everybody why that is a bit
I
later.
say I just don't see the connection, but okay. Yeah,
And I think I might have teased it, so I might have given it away. That being said, she has a new book coming out. It's supposed to drop
indeed.
tomorrow.
Yes.
So let's see, we air on Thursday. It would have
So
been,
it's already out,
yes, already out. We haven't read it yet, though.
right?
And we will. But we've been listening to all the little excerpts that are coming out as she's doing publicity. And she's talked to Robin Roberts. I hear she's talked to Oprah. I mean, Shelley O can command the big interviews, right?
Yes, yes.
And I was really interested to hear about her point of view on the inauguration of when the Trump administration came in. She said
Sure.
she wasn't that all about it. Did you hear
She
about
didn't look
that?
amused.
Did you hear what she talked about?
Yes, absolutely. She said that it was a drastic difference or drastic change from the two inaugurations she had been at prior when she'd seen her husband being inaugurated and when she was becoming first lady and being re-inaugurated. And there was such a diverse platform of people there that represented, America.
Mm-hmm.
And then being there that day when Donald Trump was being inaugurated, she noticed that like it looked like none of that progress had been made. And so she
Yeah.
said that she didn't feel the need to continue to smile all the time. And
Yeah.
she's like, I didn't feel that way, so I didn't smile. I didn't make myself smile.
Well, and couldn't you tell? Like before this book even was
Absolutely.
even thought of, I remember watching her body language, and she was so
Hmm.
stiff, and she didn't look like Happy Shelley O. She just looked like, I'm gonna do this. This is my last act as a first lady, and
Yep.
we're gonna bounce after this.
Listen. Well, and that was an interesting part of it because she
Hmm.
said that in the interview that she did with Robin Roberts, she said like it was a mixture of all of the feelings. There was
Yeah.
a pride in we have come through this process and it is over and we, did a great job. But there was also like fear and anxiety,
Hmm.
and happiness and relief
Right.
and a lot of different things. And I can imagine like having done that work and done all that you had done for the country, and then knowing that you were handing the keys over to this person. It's got to be a scary. It's got to be a culture soup, if you will, a feelings
Oh,
uh,
absolutely.
to hand that over. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she went on to say that she extended herself as most first ladies do to the incoming first lady, Melania
Hmm.
Trump, just as Laura Bush had extended herself to Michelle, and she
Yeah.
never heard from Melania. And so she put that into the universe, and it kind of came back today. Did you hear that Melania's people said something?
And I didn't hear what Melania's people said. I've been in interviews all day today, so I haven't been connected to the news today.
Yeah,
But I did hear her say that
yeah.
that she hadn't been reached out to by Melania, which was interesting to me because I do wonder if Melania feels like she can reach out to Michelle.
Well, and that's what's interesting. So she did respond. And I was watching CNN today, and they reported that a statement came out that pretty much said, I depend on my own people for, my counsel, which, alrighty.
So
There was some
Trump,
speculation. Go ahead.
that's a very Trumpy response.
Yes. There was some speculation between the two reporters that were talking that, since she has felt attacked or, people have felt like they've come for her, she kind of feels like she has to cocoon. That wasn't the word that they used, but that she has to, rely on the people around her. So I thought that was a
Sure.
very interesting response.
I will say I'm one of the more sympathetic people to Melania that I know, because most of the people that I know are like, I ain't worried about her. She did that to herself, and I get that, and I do feel a degree of that. But I know, like, I'm always really cautious with how I talk about her and think about her, because I always feel like when I see her, when I hear her, when I read about her, I always feel like I'm seeing someone in a hostage situation that doesn't know what to do. And I know that there's like a level of humor that comes along with saying that, but I genuinely mean that. Yes, she knew what she was getting herself into when she married that man, but she didn't plan on all of this. So I do have a level of sensitivity, and then considering the history that I have with Melania Trump, I'm also always mindful of it. So
right. So you mentioned the history you have with Melania, and
sorry, did I say something?
yeah, you said a little something about that. We're going to kind of ladder up to that, because I met you the very same year at
Yes.
NABJ at the NBC dinner. It was a private dinner, and you were sitting there.
Yeah.
But we kind of had connected before anyway through someone we both know. Skylar
Indeed.
Ezel is listening. Hello.
Shout out to Tyler.
Shout
Yes.
out to Skylar. So anyway, all of this kind of led up to you being at NABJ, and that's the National Association of Black Journalists. My podcast listeners have heard me talk about NABJ almost ad nauseum, so they understand my relationship. And Jared is now a member too. But
I'm
before
VP
that,
of our chapter in LA.
That's right, VP of the chapter in LA. So before I met you, something happened. I believe you were in. Were you in a Starbucks, or you were in a cafe?
Right.
You were in a Starbucks. You want to tell that story?
Yes. So about 2.5 years ago now, I was sitting in a Starbucks watching the Republican National Convention stream live on my computer. I was also live tweeting and instant messaging with a friend on Facebook, and just, having a regular evening.
Multi-screening like we do.
Exactly. I often call it millennialing. I was doing like a whole bunch of things at one time. And Melania Trump got up to do her speech at the RNC, which I was particularly interested in because it was really her first major moment in the spotlight throughout the entire campaign. And so I watched, and I was kind of tuned in and out. And as she was speaking, I heard her saying words I immediately recognized. She was saying, the height of your achievement is the reach of your dreams and your willingness. And I said aloud, along with her, and your willingness to work for them. And I was like, oh yeah, Michelle Obama said that. And kind of was like, oh my God, Michelle Obama said that.
Okay, wait. Let's back up.
Yes.
You pretty much had that speech almost memorized. It had that much of an impression on you from when Michelle said it?
No. So what's funny is if you had asked me 30 seconds before, like, what did Michelle Obama say in 2008, I would have been like, why would I know that? Like, I don't know. But it's funny because two things have happened since then. One, I do remember hearing her say that line of the speech. The height of your achievement is the reach of your dreams and your willingness to work hard for them. And I remember in the moment thinking, like, that is a really beautiful line. I just thought it was a really great piece of speech writing. And I actually wrote that line on Facebook years ago.
Oh, wow.
Which came back to me, and, Facebook does on this day.
On this day.
And it popped up in my on this day. And I was like, oh my God, that really was a thing like, I'm not making that up in my mind, that it was a thing for me a number of years ago. And so thank you to Facebook for that.
I was going to say, shout out to Mark Zuckerberg there.
Yes.
He didn't get the
Even
credit,
though we have
right?
a lot of challenges with you right now, you did that.
You did that.
So when she said it, it wasn't that I knew the whole speech. I just knew that little moment or whatever. And it wasn't even like in the forefront of my mind. I always tell people that it was like hearing a song that you hadn't heard for a long time. Like if I asked you for the lyrics to the theme song of a show from childhood, like it would take a moment, and as one comes up, then the next one, and then the next and the next. And so it happened that way for me. So it wasn't that I had it memorized. It was just something that stuck out to me back then and came back in the moment.
So the bell went off, and then what did you do?
Well, I was live tweeting. So at the time I had like 1,700 followers, I think. And I was just like tweeting like, well, pretty sure, Melania must have loved Michelle's speech since she plagiarized it. And then I was like,
Sorry for laughing.
no,
That's
like
funny.
seriously, this is plagiarized. And my reporter hat kind of went on, and I was like, no, I know that this is the thing. So I went and I started Googling like Michelle Obama, convention speech 2012, and I thought it was from 2012, and I searched for the word willingness in the speech because I thought that was an unusual word that you wouldn't have multiple times. And then I found eventually that it was in the 2008 speech. I was like, oh yes, of course. And I highlighted that little section and screenshotted it and posted it on a tweet. And then maybe an hour or so later, someone had posted on YouTube like a shoddy video where they had taken their iPhone or whatever and like recorded the screen.
Right.
And I went back and I was like, no, like I'm sure that this is a thing. And so I was trying to tweet out the link with the time code to show like it starts right here. And I clicked a few seconds earlier in the speech and I was like, oh, these are a few more words actually. And then a few more words and a few more. And then I realized like this is a whole paragraph. It's not even just the one line that I knew. And so then I was like, holy crap, this is a story. Like, this is insane.
Huge story.
So I screenshotted the even bigger one and retweeted it. And the tweet that went out that was retweeted 25,000 times that week was like, correction. It's not just like this little section. Correction. She stole a whole graph from Michelle's speech. Here's the screenshot, and then tweeted that out. And then I started emailing everyone that I could see on MSNBC, trying to figure out what their email address is. It's probably name dot this, that, and the rest was history from there.
Wow. So you automatically end up on a press junket of sorts, right? You're everywhere.
Yeah,
How much media did you do?
That night, I tweeted that thing out at like 9-ish, maybe. Before I went to bed that night, I had done 6 interviews.
By phone, Skype?
All of the above, yeah. 2 to the UK, CBS, NBC, the New York Times. Like it was just like, it was 6 different interviews. And I was really fortunate because my friend that I lived with at the time, he works in publicity. And so like my emails were starting to just roll. And it was like email after email after email. And he was like, take that, don't do that. Nope. Yep. Oh, respond to that. Like, he was like, he was there. I was like, this is nuts. And he was like going out of town the next day. And I was like,
no, I can't do that.
Exactly. So I was like, what am I going to do? And so one of the emails that came through that first night was from KTLA here in Los Angeles, which is a big station for us here. And I thought I would go do a morning show the next morning. I said yes. And I thought that'd be my day. And I ended up doing 13 interviews back to back to back that day.
In one day?
In one day, going from KTLA to NBC.
Wow.
The LA Times, like just all over the place. It was nuts.
They couldn't take a feed and give you a break. Goodness.
It was a day. But I'm grateful for all of the work experience that I'd had in this business up to that moment, because I felt like everything I had done prior had prepared me to be able to, be in a moment like that. So
that's a really good point. This was a tipping point for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was life like before that happened?
Well, so I had been, most recently I had been a reporter at a station in Tampa, Florida, and I had been laid off. And so I had spent a year and a couple of months like looking for a new job and interviewing here and interviewing there and going to this city to interview and, back and forth, and nothing was really hitting. And that morning, actually, I'd had what was like my last scheduled interview. And I had been looking forward to it for, a number of days or weeks, and was like really excited about it. And like I got on the phone call, and I remember, how sometimes, immediately like this is not
right.
This is not it. Exactly. Being a podcaster, like I've had guests on, and immediately like as soon as they start talking, you're like, this ain't gonna be a good one. And like immediately in that phone call, I was like, this is not a show that I'm interested in working on. This is not going to be good. And like, just was trying to like get through the call so that I could go like, move on. And after that call, I was so deflated. I was really let down, and just like, this was like the last thing, like, what am I going to do? And I just prayed. I was like, listen, God, girl, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm exhausted, and like, whatever you want me to do, I will do it. But like, I need you to do something because I need something to work.
Well, did he
Um,
deliver or what?
Absolutely. And I mean, in that, I always say like being an accountant would be the worst job for me because I would be terrible at it.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's a bad job. It just wouldn't be good for me. And I was like, if you want me to go be an accountant, I will go be an accountant. But like, I need you to say yes to something because everything feels like a no right now. And that was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And this happened at 8 or 9. So
Wow.
it was that same day. Yeah.
So life after, like immediately after all the interviews, what
Yeah.
happened? Life changed.
Life changed a lot. And I mean, it's still been an up and down thing. So it wasn't like you're a star. Like, you know, I had a lot of opportunities come. And the first like big thing that happened was I had been hosting a podcast for about 4 years at that time called Back to Reality with Jared Hill. And I'm Jared Hill. And so the folks at NBC BLK, Amber was her name. She was the editor there. And she was like, we want to do something with you. Like, let's see what we can do. And I was like, well, I have this show. And we transitioned that into being a Facebook Live show for NBC News. And so every week we did a show that was focused on politics and pop culture through the lens of Blackness. And it was great because it was an opportunity for me to grow the show that I had been doing and, you know, be exposed to a lot more people than I had been exposed to prior. And it was really, really fantastic. But then other writing opportunities came. And so that's how I ended up in all of these other places because my Twitter following grew, you know, tenfold or more than that over the course of that week, those couple of weeks, and has continued to grow since. And so an editor at the New York Times, she was like, oh, yeah, I've been following you since that story. Like, you know, would you be interested in working on this? And I was like,
wow.
Yeah. You know,
Is that even a question?
exactly. So, the editor there, Jill, she's been really, really great. And so I've written with her a number of times. And it's also allowed me into rooms that I wasn't necessarily, you know, getting seen to come into. So it's been really great. It's also been a challenge because, like, I'm still a freelancer. You know, I go back and forth on whether or not I want to be a full-timer. There are times when it seems like it'd be really appealing for the right opportunity. And then there are times when it seems like being a freelancer is the best for me. So right now I'm kind of in this space of trying to decide if I want to go back to being a full-timer somewhere just because it has its perks of a place. So I'm kind of in that.
The Culture Soup is a little bit inspirational too because we tell these stories of my friends and they all have these incredible stories and you are not an exception. What was the lesson in it? Because you know what I'm hearing and then I want you to tell me. But what I'm hearing, when you were truly in your most authentic self, doing what Jared does, doors open.
Yeah. For me, I have found that twice in my life, I've been in that moment of like, look, God, what do you want me to do? And it's been a reminder, if nothing else, from God, the all, the universe, whatever you like to call it, that like, I didn't do all this for nothing. I haven't put you in front of these people. I haven't brought you to this room. I haven't given you this experience. I haven't shown you what I've shown you. And I haven't given you the gifts that I've given you to do nothing with them. So if you think that I've had you as a journalist since you were in 11th grade and being a creative since 5th grade and being able to speak in front of people and hosting events since you were in 8th grade, if you think I did all that for you to go be an accountant, you're an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, if I wanted you to be an accountant, I would have put you in math and I would have, you know, taken you into the business route and I would have taken you in that route to go be an accountant. But like, if you think I did all of this for you to go do that, you're not paying attention.
So his promises are real.
Yeah, and it's just it's also interesting to me because I was actually just talking to a friend of mine about this right before we were on this call. I had never called myself a journalist before this happened. I had always been a writer or a producer or a list of other things. And I had never called myself a journalist because I always thought of being a journalist as something that was bigger than me. Like I was not good enough to call myself that. And then when this happened, I remember the first headline that I saw that jarred me was from the New York Times. And they referenced me as a journalist. Mind you, all the headlines were shady because it was like out of work journalist, unemployed journalist,
I
journalists that
remember
don't got
that.
no job.
Right.
Like, and
I
so
remember that.
all of them said journalist, and it was so jarring to me physically. Like, what is that? Like, no, 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 no. Like, I'm not, you know what I mean? And then kind of sitting with that for a while and being like, okay, I mean, it makes sense, but like I had never been comfortable using that title for myself, which I later would realize is something we call the imposter syndrome of like never feeling worthy of like your success and the things that you've the accolades that you get or the work that you get to do or anything like that. And so that was a big part of what came after that for me was being able to embrace that like this is what I do. This is a part of who I am, and I've been this person. I've been a journalist since I was in 11th grade when I was on the school newspaper, and you know, learning to write stories. And my first story that I ever wrote when I was in newspaper went viral, if you will, in our city where we're from. You know, so yeah, that's kind of what the message was to me. Like I didn't give you all of this. I didn't give you all this experience for you to not use it.
Right.
So
So the internet enabled so much of this, social media and such, and you're a digital native, right? So you were right
yeah.
there in your space, and you're still in that space. So there are a
hmm
number of topics that we talked about that we want to delve into about how the social sphere is rolling right now. And one thing you mentioned was how white supremacy is kind of taking hold right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me your thoughts on that, because I have noticed that there's all sorts of vitriol on social media of all places, where it can be a very positive place, it can be a very negative one too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been working on this piece that I'm trying to get out of myself, if you will, for probably over a year. That's just kind of been like stewing in me about reframing the idea of what white supremacy is. Because I think when people hear white supremacy, they think of white hoods and burning crosses and, you know, the hand and the swastika and all that, which obviously that is a demonstration of white supremacy, but it's not the demonstration of white supremacy. White supremacy, if you just say it multiple times, it starts to just become words, right? It's about this idea of whiteness being supreme or better or bigger or nicer or cleaner or more desirable or whatever adjective you want to put in there. And so I've been thinking about the ways in which it shows up in our lives in every aspect of life. As a media person that works in television, the fact that we are still seeing like the first Black person anchored this or host that or get this position, that's a function of white supremacy, right? It's always been a white person who's been able to break that has always held these positions. And like a Black person is the first person in late night, or a Black person or a brown person even, right? Like right now we have Hassan Minaj, who has this excellent show, Patriot Act on Netflix. He's the first, you know, Middle Eastern man or Indian man to have a late night themed show. That's a function of white supremacy, right? But
Are you
also,
like me? I don't get excited when I hear that in 2018. It's the
it's
first Black so and so, and I'm like, okay, that would have been cool in 1920.
maybe in the 60s
Yes.
when we made, but like, I'm on both sides of the spectrum. Like I'm happy to see that person break the barrier,
Right.
but it also always illuminates for me like how much more work we have to do. I think about Barack Obama being elected, and in 2008, you know, the next morning, the New York Times says Obama, you know, that our country has finally broken this racial barrier. And I always think like, yeah, we've broken through this barrier, but like we still have a whole lot of work to do. When Barack Obama could have been elected and him being Black wasn't a part of the headline or the sub headline, then we're past race, right? And like we're a long way away from that. And many would argue that we're actually in a worse position now by some standards than we were back then.
Well, it's been like a
So
boomerang.
what's that?
It's been like a boomerang.
Absolutely, yeah. I say it's like an a massive overcorrection, right? Like we had all of this progress, and now we've like, if we took 5 steps forward, we feel like we've taken 3 steps back, and maybe even 6, depending on the day. So I'm always finding the different ways that white supremacy presents itself for myself and in our culture. Talking with my friend on the phone, he was talking about feeling like at work he has to present in a certain way for white people to see him as capable or valuable, or you know what I mean, as worthy of the position. And I'm like, how many Black people have walked into work and felt that?
Yeah.
Right? How many Black people have been in a space and felt belittled or othered or just degraded because they didn't look like the other people?
You know, I wrote a piece recently. I don't know if you've seen it yet. I haven't published it in any of the big publications yet. It will be soon, but it's about microaggressions and just how you can just be walking along in your daily life, minding your own business, doing mundane things, when someone will walk into your space and try to command your space and command you too.
Absolutely.
And it was all because of a t-shirt I had on that had French on it. It says "Ça va" on the front, and on the back, "Très bien, merci." You know what? That's conversational French. Like, if you have Google Translate, you can get it. But I'm sitting there with my daughter, my 6-year-old, trying to have lunch. And I go to get a lemonade, and this woman walks up behind me and says, "Do you know what your shirt says?" Right. That look right there.
Do you know what my shirt says?
That look right there. So I'm like trying to fill up my baby's cup. And I'm like, I'm going to have to gather somebody up. So I turn around and I said, well, of course I know what my shirt hat says. I have it on. And I went on about my business. And then she presses, "Do you know French?" Oh. You gotta read the article, because it was a lesson in parenting and a lesson in confronting microaggressions.
Okay.
Right there in front of my daughter.
I love it.
Yeah, but I mean, people don't see that as white supremacy. I never called the woman out as white. Heck, she could have been anything in the scenario, but she was, and that's what happened. I don't know if she thought I was younger and just had on a hand-me-down or what, but yes, I took almost 8 years of French in high school and college, but I don't think I need to explain that to you because you're not in charge.
Exactly. Right. You're not the boss of me.
Exactly.
Well, and I think you touch on an important point. Like, when we hear white supremacy, again, we think of white supremacists as like these images of what we've seen in our lives and in media, but realistically, like, white supremacy is pervasive in all communities, right? There are Black people, all of us as Black people, think things, feel things, respond to things in a way that centers whiteness, that says whiteness is rightness, if you will. And it's a problem that, you know, that touches everyone. And I was just saying to someone on the phone the other day, like, I don't know if white supremacy is our greatest import or export, because it obviously didn't start here, but like it came to America with the colonizer.
Anywhere there was colonizing.
Exactly. Like they brought it here, and then like it has definitely exported itself around the world. And and like I use this example because it shows like it's not just about white people. So like, there's a story of a Canadian restaurant that on occasion will charge the people for their food before they get the food as opposed to after.
On occasion?
Well, like if they recognize the people as people they quote know. And like the server was an Asian woman, and she saw these Black people come in and she pre-charged them for their food as opposed to after they had been served and eaten their food. And it was one of those things of, oh, we don't know who those Black people are, and so we're going to make sure that we get our money. That's a function of white supremacy, right? Totally. You see something that is not white as not being as good as, and thinking, oh, they're probably going to steal, or they probably don't have the money to be here. Or do you speak French? And like being surprised by the answer. Right. You know what I mean? when you see me walking, like I've often had jobs where my bosses were white women. When I walk into a meeting, when I walk into a conversation, or, God forbid, there's an issue or something, right?
Right.
I am always hyper aware that I'm a 6'3" black loud voice man who walks into a space, and I know that I am inherently intimidating before I even start to speak, right? And then I speak this way as opposed to what you might say black people are supposed to quote unquote speak like. And I'm always just hyper aware of how I present and want to make sure that people feel comfortable and they're okay, and that they don't think that I mean this and that. And like slowly I've been chipping away at that and being like, look, I'm not here to make you feel comfortable. I'm here to do my job. And like, and that kind of thing. I have a friend who he's a manager, a director at his job, and he manages a group of people, and he is the most measured, careful, thoughtful person with the kindest, most thoughtful words. And he had to tell an employee, like, you're not doing your job, basically. And he's like, I was there with my hands folded in a low tone and using kind words and being thoughtful and expressive and all of this. And afterward, she went to my senior and said, I felt threatened and I was afraid and I was scared. And they have an intervention. And she says to him, well, I felt like you were banging your hands on the desk and you were doing this. And he was like, hold on. Was I doing that? Or you felt like I was doing that? Mm-hmm. Well, I felt like, okay, so that's to do with you, not about me. That's white supremacy. I'm afraid of you, black man. I have this image of you as being violent or aggressive or angry because of what I've been told about what it is to be black and not white.
Yeah.
Right. So
I was so glad when McKinsey and Lean in the Women in the Workplace study, leaned in for women of color, because we've always known that there's a difference, but now there's data, and they say that black women are suffering the most in corporate America from what they call a double opposite. I think that's what I have to find out. I'll edit that part.
You're black and you're a woman, right?
Yes, you're black and you're a woman, which is the exact opposite of the infrastructure that corporate America is used to, which is white and male. So your very presence is an issue, right?
Absolutely.
Where people are used to seeing you in not even that space. But if you're in that space, perhaps you're support. Perhaps you're cleaning. Perhaps you're doing something else other than being in charge. So we end up facing more than even our white sisters because we're double opposite. And that just...
Which is hard for white women to get to.
Yes. I was like, eureka. I'm glad somebody wrote that down because I felt it all my working life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's something really valuable in being able to capture data about that, right? Because when the evidence is always anecdotal, it's, oh, that's about Michelle.
Right.
Oh, that's about Skylar. Oh, that's about Jared.
Right.
But it's like, no. This is about the culture.
Right.
This is about society. This is about the workplace and how we've all been trained. And this always comes back to me whenever I think about this. There's something so valuable in that test that was done with the kids and the dolls. And I can't remember what they call it. The kids and the dolls, where they ask the kids, the little kids, like they show them these black dolls and white dolls and ask them like, which one is the good doll? Which one is the bad doll? Which one is the pretty one? Which one is the ugly? Which one is bad? Which one is good? And like the idea that even these little kids, right, they've already learned this idea that being black is wrong. And what does that do to a kid, right? To see yourself reflected and to see that you are what is bad. There's some self-fulfilling prophecy in there, right?
Oh, totally. Like, well, and here's the thing, dolls in culture, all the way back to prehistoric times, were made for modeling for kids. So they modeled through play with these dolls. And I literally did some studies on that in college. And so it's no mistake that they would actually use dolls in that test in the 70s, was it? 60s, 70s? It was an old test.
I did it multiple times, and it's always come back the same,
Yeah. So, Jared, what projects are you working on now that you can talk about? What's coming up?
Well, I've been developing show ideas, and I'm currently pitching those ideas out right now. The big project that I'm working on right now is a book that is, girl, it is kicking my ass.
Oh no.
It is a lot of work, but I'm so excited about it. It's about a man named Reggie Webb. He is this extraordinary black man who was one of the highest level executives. He was the highest level executive at McDonald's at the time that was black.
I thought I knew his name.
Yeah, and he is just an awesome, awesome man who left the corporate side of McDonald's to be on the franchise side of McDonald's, and now runs a company with 1,000 employees and really, really changed the face of McDonald's with what is called a parity agreement, getting McDonald's to agree that their company needs to look like America. And if America's 13% of black people, we need to have McDonald's be 13% black people at least. That crossed over to all of marginalized groups, and to women, to Latinos and Asians and all that. So I'm working on that book right now. And, let's pray that the Holy Ghost sends the anointing. And also still writing at a bunch of places and venturing into some new spaces as well in media and television. So I'm excited about it.
That's awesome. Jarrett, tell everybody where to find you online if they haven't already.
Yes. Everywhere I am at Jarrett Hill. My name is Jarrett with 2 R's and 2 T's. No matter what they tell you at Starbucks, because, girl, they have spelled it every kind of way. So it's Jarrett Hill.
I'm Michael at Starbucks.
Exactly. Literally today, it was Jet, Jet. I said it 3 times. So Jarrett Hill everywhere. And you can find me, follow me, and reach out to me at jarretthill.com. So, yeah.
Best of luck to you, Jarrett. If there's ever anything I can do to support you, you let me know. And we want to have you back at some point.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know where to find me.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Jarrett. Bye.
See you. Bye.